So yeah, like I was saying, if you wanted to go see the other presentations, they were recorded and they're on the Faculty Commons website. They're labeled Gamification 1 and 2. All you have to do is click on the images, and that should take you straight to the videos. And thanks to our guest there, sorry, I have to remember your name, Abinash, reminded me last time that we needed to, I needed to share that. And so it's everything's shared and easily viewable. So we'll go on to the next slide here.
So just as a quick recap about what I was looking for, I was building a teaching English as a foreign language certificate program. I was building a non-credit program that I wanted accessible by community members. And so this would be offered through PCE. I was looking for something that was mobile friendly. I wanted courses that you could take on your phone that felt like the ways that we used our phone. Like I didn't really have the vocabulary other than that. That's what I was reaching for. I wanted each course to produce a real product that students could use for applying for jobs in TEFL. And I was looking for students to have entry immediately to the professional conversation. So instead of students having 2 to 4 years as part of a TEFL or TESOL certificate program before they entered the field, I was building courses that you could, in as few as 3 months, have a TEFL certificate. And that means you'd be out in the profession. So I was looking for something that gave them automatic entry into that. And I also knew that anyone taking these courses towards the TEFL certificate program was going to be interested in travel, and they were going to be interested in places around the world. And I somehow wanted to harness that. I just didn't know how. And then I instead of like my university campus courses, instead of focusing on theories, frameworks, concepts, researchers, I just wanted to focus on the behaviors that effective TEFL teachers could use.
Yeah, and if you'll notice from what she said, that pipeline from the classroom to being employed in the field is tight. So all the delivery of the content had to be as efficient as possible. It needed to deliver those concepts, those examples, and that immersion in as real a way as possible to those students, and as effective at what means as possible. And so that was really what the challenge was, as to how to make this as quick from being in the classroom to being on the job and being aware of what you're going to, the situations you're going to be in, more or less. So I guess this is my part. So my suggestion, hi Gwen, and for a lot of other courses other than this, is gamification and newer approaches. So the idea is that, you know, we've been living in this traditional model and going through it, and from cradle to, you know, university, where you get lectured to, you try and remember all the content, and then you regurgitate it, and that's supposed to count as learning. But then when it comes to applying it, there's usually some kind of disconnect, because you can read about all the theory you want, and you can, you know, regurgitate it, but until you're actually doing the thing that you're supposed to be learning about, you don't understand how all the little pieces fit together. So gamification, the idea behind it is that, look, let's take these concepts, let's put these students in scenarios where they will have to take that knowledge and apply it to overcome challenges in those scenarios, and then they'll make those connections to see how everything fits together in this big puzzle. So like she was saying, she wanted to make her courses mobile friendly. One of the most straightforward ways to make something mobile friendly is to have podcasts and short videos in interesting settings. I heavily emphasize on podcasts because I prefer them over lectures. A lecture is just a person talking about a topic, and it's not interactive. The podcast that we had Gina do, she was interviewing other people, talking to them, getting stories from them regarding their experiences in these different situations. And so there was a lot more back and forth, and it showed it's giving those students that visualization through the their mind's eye, and hearing those stories about what kind of things they'll have to be dealing with. And when it comes to the short videos and interesting settings, when you're producing video content and you're a talking head sitting in front of a plain background, there's nothing visually stimulating going on there. It's just a person talking. But if you are in a location that is relevant to the topic that you are speaking about, and you are actually doing an action in that location that relates to the topic you're speaking about, and tying all those things together, then that paints a much more colorful picture for the students to say, okay, I can see that she is there. I can see why she is there. And I can understand that when I am there, this is what I will be doing. So it's helping relate students visually to what the concepts are. Interesting. So like I was saying with the podcast, we're talking about interviews and not monologues. And it doesn't just have to be interviews. It can also be debates. Interviews are great for when you want to get examples from professionals in the field, or students that have, what their experiences were when they first started there, or scholars who have been studying this content for a long time. But another option that I'd love to still see explored is the debate style. And it's not one of these things that has to be confrontational or aggressive, but people do find themselves drawn to events or things where people disagree, and they have to discuss a topic, but in a respectful manner. That's something that I like to harp on, that is not happening enough in the world today, is people having differing views, respecting each other's views, and discussing them in a respectful manner, because it's not something that is modeled in front of students that often. And if we are brave enough to model that behavior and show them that, yes, you can do this in a respectful way, people might not disagree, but at least you can come away knowing that, hey, I can be a professional, and I can deal with confrontation in a positive way. And I think that's something that I'd love to see modeled a lot more. And then a course riddle to be solved. So this is something I think I was showing Gina about, because I had designed a course myself where I'd hidden things throughout the course. And at the very end of the course, the final test required the students to go back through the course and follow the hints that I had given them, and then use that to solve the puzzle that was relating to the hints. And so what that does is it has the students go back, review all that content that they had to know for that final, and apply it to, overcoming the test, being that final challenge. And Gina, like, how specifically did you do that for your course?
I think I did it in two ways. First of all, I created what I call dilemma and key.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the very beginning of the course, one of the first things that students hear is they hear me interviewing someone in the field who experienced a problem that directly relates to the content of the course. So we stop the interview before they talk about how they solved it. The students have the course, and then a task they have to do is they're brought back to that riddle, that problem, and they're asked, now, based on everything you've learned, what would you do? And they complete that, they fill that out. And then once they do that, that opens up the key, dilemma and key. And so they get to see how, and they get to hear how did the person who experienced this problem solve it. But the other way that I built in the riddle was with Jim's help using AI images, we created, every course was focused on a different country. We never name it, but at the top of each of the pages, the Canvas pages, there would be a different image. It might be a cafe, a classroom setting, students walking on the street, people shopping. So it was a different scene. And each one was from the same country. And so students would be asked at the end of the course, before they turned in their final work, what country do you believe we were visiting? And so one thing I learned from Jim is, I mean, the way I've always operated is that I want students to go back and review what we learned before the final product so they can synthesize it. They can put it all together. But I'm relying on their good judgment to do that. And then I'm kind of maybe following orders when I tell them to do that. Jim said, make it playful, make them have an intrinsic reason to go back and look over that material by figuring out what was the country that we were visiting, even if they hadn't noticed it the entire time. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No,
That's how I built in the riddle.
And I love that you went that way. Other ways aside from like a larger scope like that, you can embed links within images. So somebody might not even know that that's there, but if they go and they mouse over it and they see that it's linked, that link they can click on that and that can take them somewhere else.
Oh, I'm doing that in my next course.
Okay. Or like, for example, maybe you have, a bunch of texts that you're telling the story from, that you're using to tell a story. And maybe one word in that text is italicized. And that maybe that word is part of a larger sentence that you're hiding throughout these different modules. There's all different kinds of ways you can hide hints within your course. And as long as you can get your students to go and try and find those, they'll start working together and they'll start figuring things out. And so it can be a real fun treasure hunt for them to go and try out. You can even do things like GPS coordinates if you're really adventurous, and send them to go to find a place physically, which is I've done in the previous
cool.
So just feel free to use your imagination. So quick recap on the software that I use. This won't take terribly long. This is just a list of the software that I use to create the content. So I've talked about Adobe Podcast before. It's absolutely fantastic. If you have even some of the worst audio recordings in the world, from like the worst microphone in the world, you can run it through the vocal enhance module on Adobe Podcast and it will clean up the vast majority of it. If you then take that file from that you download from the vocal enhancement section and move it over to the Studio Beta section, you'll have the Studio Beta transcribe your words from the audio file, and then you can edit that text document. And while editing the text document, it will edit the audio file. So if you'd have some ums or uhs, you can do a Control F and search for those, find them, click on them, delete them, and it will delete those ums and uhs from the audio file. It's one of the easiest methods of doing podcast editing. I used Stable Diffusion for generating a lot of the imagery that Gina used in her course. And if you're familiar with any kind of AI image generation, a lot of it can be janky at times. So you have to realize, when is good enough good enough? And sometimes if it's not good enough, then you have to take it into Photoshop and fix some things up. For putting together those podcasts, I also used Adobe Premiere for the video editing side. There wasn't a lot of video editing, but I did make like placeholder thumbnails and titles for each of her podcasts. So if you're going to be doing something like that where you have to have a visual element, it's always nice to have that in there so people can go and see the actual image and the title and know where that belongs within the course. And then if you're ever stuck trying to get good images to use, I highly recommend Adobe Stock. That comes with the whole Adobe suite that you get when you go to IT and request those Adobe keys. You can go in there, do an image search, find all kinds of images, and you can either use those, or you can use Stable Diffusion, or you can use a combination in Photoshop. There's a lot of freedom out there with your image choices. And then as far as hardware, if you're going to be using something like Stable Diffusion, you're really going to need a computer that has an NVIDIA GPU. That image generation software is very processor GPU intensive, and it's specifically optimized to be used on NVIDIA GPUs. So if you currently don't have a computer that has it, that might be something that you maybe push off and try to do with Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Stock. But if you do have an NVIDIA GPU on your computer, then you have a lot more freedom. And then the GoPro. I have a GoPro 10 Black. I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 year old technology, but it's more than adequate to do whatever needs to be done. I mean, I basically handed that and like 3 batteries over to Gina, and she would run out to the location and do the recording and come on back, and she would just like do just a ton of recording and stuff and get it all done. And so that the amount of effort that she put in made it easier on me on the back end editing side, because it was like I had everything I needed when she was done with it, and I was able to get that workflow going, and it really just gelled. We got our workflow down, and it just happened.
Yep, it did. It did.
Okay, moving forward.
Okay, so I think one way you could look at the whole experiment of me from scratch, with help, a lot of help from Catherine Kemble and Jen Ryan, creating a 9-course TEFL certificate with these intensive short courses. I was thinking that was going to be my product, and now I think the changes in me are the product from what we did from that experiment. So and I don't even know that I fully have the vocabulary to talk about how I've changed in my thinking about how I want to be as a teacher educator. But I realized that I've really worked out of a place that was principally drawing on students' extrinsic motivation. Even though I was trying to get them to make connections with their future teaching and making things as fun as I could, I think really I was tapping into extrinsic motivation. And now I'm in a place, gamification and thinking about these newer ways of approaching courses, I'm thinking about intrinsic motivation as at least taking up some of the space in the room. And also the way I've thought about having students carry out activities was very task oriented. I've assigned this thing, they have a responsibility to do this thing. And now I'm thinking, I guess I'm thinking of it as like goal oriented. They've got something bigger than this course that they want to be able to do. And they're going to apply what they're getting from this course in order to do that. I've also, as much as I have had as enriching conversations as possible, I think overall students have moved through my courses, whether face-to-face or online, as a solo journey. And now I'm thinking of it more, I mean, there's something going on in these courses that are gamified that's more of a shared journey, including with me. I feel like I'm on the journey with the students. I also feel like I'm moving from a place of focusing on student performance in my classes to really getting closer to student competence. And I don't even know fully what that all means. I'm still thinking through that, but I think that's a dimension in the change in me. And then another thing that I've always thought about courses as is almost like you're stringing beads, right? You've got this string, and you're choosing your units, you're choosing your models, you're choosing your subtopics, and you're placing them there, and maybe you're placing them just so. And now I'm having bigger ideas about how can threads be run in multiple threads through a course. And a lot of times that's going to be a riddle or a story or a mystery, but something's running throughout, and it's not just stringing individual element beats.
Yeah, it's not unconnected concepts. Everything is all coherent in one universe.
Yeah.
And it all makes sense together. Oh, I need to scoot over more. I'm sorry. I just lean out so much. She's a star.
So, I needed to create a new course for this academic year. The SRA told me to reduce the number of credits in my minor, and what I came up with is to create a new course that brings together actually the key concepts from 4 different courses into one. So this was already going to be a kind of a big thing. And at the end of creating the TEFL certificate, I finally had the time this summer to work on the ESLG 380 course.
I don't know when you did that, because it was right as we were finishing the other one.
I know. I know. I did not get a summer, as everyone has been to the other 2 now. But anyways, so I was leaving campus. I walked through Showalter. I went into Jim's office. He's now here in the faculty commons, but then he was in Showalter. And I said, Jim, I'm going to start the course design this weekend. I want to apply what I learned through the TEFL certificate. Tell me one thing that's going to guide me in the right direction. And he said, tell a story. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about that. And by the time I had driven back into Spokane, I landed on, I'm going to design this new course around a course mystery. And so the students, this is their first and possibly only course they will take about how to teach English as a second language before they get to P12 or K-12 teaching. And so I created a course mystery where all the students are finding out that they are being placed in a faux Spokane elementary school as volunteers. And this all unfolds through shared artifacts. I created them with Canva, with ChatGPT, with the image generator in Canva. I also tried out the image generator in ChatGPT as well, pretty good. And so every time a new module opens up, students are given these artifacts. I do not narrate, I do not interpret them. They are just experiencing them. They look like real artifacts. Canva is good. And then what happens is then the students get me giving that crucial content they need that week that's going to help them interpret those artifacts. When we meet in the discussion, the principal of that faux elementary school asks them a question. They have to go back to the artifacts. They need to reflect on what they got from me, and they have to share what they think is going on. The course mystery, by the way, is in this elementary school. Almost all of the English language learners have suddenly stopped talking, and they don't know why. And so students are learning all of these different elements that are key to being a competent ELL teacher, and they have to use that to see what might be impacting and what might not be.
It was such a great idea. I was so stoked when you told, yeah, it really is.
So, so how's the gamification work? So module opens with a module overview as required by IT. And then the module artifacts, and they're authentic looking elementary school context. They look like the real agendas for a teacher's meeting, or a page from the newsletter for the school, or a note left for the janitor. And then there's a module podcast. That's what I've created. And then resources to view and explore. And then they meet in the module discussion. The elementary principal poses mini questions in which students must use module tools, theories, and frameworks to respond. This time around for fall, it's just written in text, but I'm going to use some of those nifty technologies that I learned from Jim. Actually, the teacher is going to appear by spring in the discussion and actually orally give it as well. There'll be a transcript in case students need that, but they'll be able to meet that teacher and hear those questions.
Oh, that's so cool. I can't
So-
wait to see that.
And then the final product, courses like this, I have always had a final paper. Well, I decided to make the final product a letter to the elementary school principal, in which they have to respond to that overall bigger question she posed in that very opening week. Why do you think most of the ELLs have likely stopped talking, and what can we do about it?
It's a great mystery. It's not a murder mystery, but it's a great, mystery to solve.
I hope so.
So just from my side of the equation, what I got to see as a result of us working together and trying out these new ideas, primarily what was most important for me was to see somebody moving away from the standard traditional teaching methods and trying something different. And, don't think this is an easy thing, because a lot of the traditional teaching methods do work, and there's still a lot of value to them, but there's a variable that is no longer valid, or not as valid, in that we're different. We're in a different age, and we learn differently than we used to, and we're constantly evolving as a species. And one of the ways we do that is by trying new things, by experimenting, by inventing. And I really want to see that joy of new discovery, not just, with the students, but especially with teachers, because you have the freedom and the inspiration to do so many things. And sometimes all it takes is just one idea, and that opens up this doorway to a whole new set of possibilities that you never thought you would have had before. And when I get to see that in Gina, that gets me so excited, because I know it's possible for everybody. I know everybody can do this same level of teaching and have it be awesome, have it be fun for them, and have it be great for the students. And then, like I'm saying here, with the empowerment to iterate and create new and interesting things, like with that mystery, she took that and ran, and it just become this totally awesome idea that I hadn't even thought about before. But it's a new thing, like I said, it just takes one little idea, one little key, and then you've got all these things that you can do. And now she's spent 3 workshops with me, branching out, reaching out to everybody and saying, hey, there's this cool thing that you can try out, and it's fun. And now I feel like I have like an evangelist out there for,
You do.
for trying out new things like this. And I have this by the sinking ship here, this quote that doing things because that's the way it's always been done often leads to stagnation and doesn't meet the needs of today's students. I mean, if you think about the way you've been teaching, is that intellectually stimulating to you? Is that intellectually stimulating to the students? Do you feel like you're just following in the ruts on the road, and you can't get out of it, and you're stuck doing the same thing over and over again? Variety is the spice of life, and if you're stuck in one lane for your whole life, you're not going to grow as a person. You're not going to enjoy life as a person. So why not try something new and interesting? And it's not always going to be pretty. You know, experimentation can be scary, messy, and it might not always work. And it might even fail. But if you don't mess around, you'll never find out. If you don't go out on that exploration down the road less traveled, you're never going to know what could have happened if you tried something new. But if you do need a guide or ideas, that's what I am here for. So, you know, I'm happy to come on an individual basis, meet you where you are on Catalyst, you know, in your office, in my office, wherever, and just throw around ideas and help out even, you know, with the building of your courses. Like that's what I'm here to help do, whether it's from a group or an individual. Please reach out to me, because I want to do more cool things. I want to see you all do cool things and enjoy it.
And really quickly, Jim said he's willing to meet you where you are, and then he said Catalyst, blah blah blah. Actually, he's willing to meet us where we are, in wherever we are in thinking about this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he knew 3 minutes in when he met me that I really had no idea how the technology worked, and I was kind of scared of it. And that was fine. I mean, you just met me where I am. So wherever you are, if you're open to these ideas at all, just reach out to Jeff.
You don't have to be an expert. I'm not an expert in everything, and I want to learn new things from all of you. Like I learned so much from Gina in this process. It's a mutual, like you're saying, a shared journey that we all get to take together, and I want to go on that journey with everybody.
Okay, so how's that course going? ESLG 380. I last week gave a survey to my students, and I told them that anybody who wanted to fill it out, it was extra credit. I didn't get a whole lot of responses, but I did get some data. Let's take a look. So one of the questions I asked, so Likert scale, 5 a lot, 1 not at all. How much is the gamification of the course that they're in increasing your interest in the course content? So how is it in changing your interest? And 66% said quite a bit. And then how much is the gamification increasing your understanding of the course content? And here I was so excited. 33% said a lot, and 66% said quite a bit. So thrilled with that. Have there been any moments during the course in which thinking through the course mystery has given you additional understanding? And 100% said yes. And that, for me, that was the moment, right? Because that's what I was looking for when they're thinking through what they're going to say in the discussion, how they respond to that principal's questions, and how did they take everything I've just kind of dumped on them? How do they make sense of that? That thinking through the mystery has led them to deeper understanding. That's what I'm looking for. So I was also wondering how they felt about, you know, just me kind of including this course mystery in. And so I essentially had a prompt that asked them in those opening days of the course, and I always open my courses, I try for 2 weeks before the quarter begins. So in that 2 weeks before and in the opening days, how did you feel about the course mystery? And some said confused, and the rest said intrigued. And then at the point that they did the module, at the point they did this survey, they had completed 4 modules. They were in the 5th. And so I asked again, how are you feeling now? And most were intrigued, and some felt motivated. They described themselves as motivated. And I don't know if I included this. Let's go one more and see if I included it. Oh, okay. One more thing that I should have included on here is, because my students are preparing to be teachers, I asked the question, is the gamification of this course causing you to consider whether or not you could gamify learning for your own students? And 100% said quite a bit or a lot. Yeah. So that too, I was hoping to impact them as future teachers.
That's meta right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Inspiring and influencing the next, generation of teachers out there to say, hey, here's this idea. So I guess this is just some thoughts from me. So what does this suggest for us? So maybe I should be asking this to the greater group here. Let me just pull out of the sharing here so I can see who we're talking to, and then refer back to this. So whoops, not that one. Where'd it go? There. Yeah. So what does it suggest for everybody out here? What kind of ideas do you have? Whoops.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from folks.
Anybody? Anybody have some ideas on what they'd like to do? Abinash?
Can you please share the screen?
Sure. I'll go back and share the screen. It was just easier for me to go back on there. Hold on a second. Gotta go share screen. There we go. Yeah.
You should be able to change the view as long as you see.
Sorry, I thought you were showing something else.
No, yeah, it's just the slide here.
So what do folks think about when you hear all of this? And we have visitors to our campus here. Thoughts? What do you all think?
So this is for your students, who want to be teachers, future. Can you use this kind of program for in-service teachers training, for teacher training?
So the students going through my courses could theoretically be in-service teachers, but they actually are
Yes. Yeah. Can you use it for in-service teachers, teacher training?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you could. I think it would need to look a little bit different. Just like I knew I wanted to harness the shared imagination with the TEFL certificate. I knew that everybody taking this course is curious and excited about joining K-12 classrooms, right? So I knew that if I could bring K-12 school life alive with all of these artifacts, that would be a way to draw them in. In-service teachers, I think I'd have to think of another way to harness their imagination. Yeah, I don't think it could be quite the same.
Does anybody have any questions, Abinash, John, Parker?
Or any comments?
This has got some gears turning, so thank you. I don't yet have anything that's quite ready to articulate that would make much sense to share yet, but it definitely has got some some notions bouncing around. So thank you very much.
Parker, can you
Yeah.
any ideas on could this work for language classes?
I mean, I think it definitely could, and it's occurring to me while listening to you that a lot of the language classes that I teach, generally they're with students who are already pretty proficient. I don't often teach, say, in the second year, or even less often, if ever, in the first year of language. But in those levels, I have taught those levels a lot, even if mostly before I came to Eastern. And so yeah, certainly in those classes, students have to just kind of own the fact that they're working with a linguistic reduction, right? Or not a reduction, but I mean, it's compared to their native language, they're going to have to accept limits. And so you might as well, to borrow some phrase from your slide, they might as well mess around and find out, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, what I would almost suggest is, say if you were going to take one of your classes and do it from scratch from the very beginning. If you can just write down and imagine what would be the coolest thing I could possibly do, and what would be fun for me to experience if I was going to go through this as a student, or if I was going to play this as a game, if I was going to have a simulation, what kind of cool things could there be in there, and what kind of storyline would that follow? And you start with the big, I want everything. And then once you have that big picture of all the things that you want, isolate and say, okay, how can I get this part of it? How can I get that part of it? And there's all kinds of tools that can be used to get those individual pieces that make up that big picture. So there really isn't as much of a limitation on what you can do. Like we're in 2025 now, we've got flying cars supposedly, and we're going to Mars or whatever. Like, we have all this technology that's here. The real only limitation is your imagination, and we can find a way to make it happen. At least that's my spiel.
So I got a question.
Sure.
So it sounds like when you were working with Gina that you were quite involved with the process, or at least
Sure.
you said on the back end.
Yeah.
Was that like, how much, if we were to do this, how much support can we expect in this? Like, you sounds like you were doing some of the editing and that kind of thing. Is that something that we can expect from you, or is this something that you're going to help us learn to do on ourselves, or like?
It's kind of a yes and a bull but kind of a scenario. So primarily I'm more focused on doing the educational part, but as I do have time, I can allocate some resources if some specific things are needed as necessary. The other thing I would point out is that you don't have to do everything everywhere all at once. If that makes sense. You can take you already have a bunch of courses already, and if you want to redesign one, you can take it and do it piece by piece, so that it can happen on your own time, instead of trying to cram it all into as short a time as possible. Though, as we found out, you can do it, though it's not easy. And trust me, you don't want to be in that situation where it's the deadline for the course is coming up, and you're only about 75% of the way through it, and it's 12 hours till the course starts. Not a fun situation to be in. Would not recommend it. But if you are able to plan out and say, okay, this is how long it took to accomplish these parts of the course, and extrapolate out from there, then it'll give you a reasonable timeline that you can expect to finish these things in.
Great. Thanks.
Sure.
I think that there were three reasons that Jim provided me so much help. First of all, I wrote him an email on his very first day, and he didn't put together faculty work yet. I mean, I heard he was coming literally, and I had an email locked and loaded, ready to go. And second of all, I was really in a tight spot because I had just gotten permission to create these 9 courses, and they had to be ready to go by September 1. And so I really had kind of a big ask there. And then the third is that I think that Jim was thinking that if we did this thing together, we could be doing this kind of thing together. In other words, if he helped me create this thing and got my buy-in, that I could help other people do that. Now, moving forward, now I'm doing my own work with the technology. But I'm also gonna come back to Jim for kind of some fine tuning, like, hey, let's go back over how to do that again. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the best possible scenario, is that if we go through this process together, and you come out the other side or having all the skills you need to do this on your own. I mean, how cool is that? Yeah. Because that empowers you to do anything. Yeah. Like, suddenly you can go and make any course whenever you want on your own terms, and you don't have to depend on anybody. You got your own passion that you can explore, and that just gives you so much more freedom. I think that's awesome.
I did want to say, the first time that Jim and I met and he was showing me, kind of dazzling me with all these different technologies, I was thinking that there was the course creation and then there was the labor of the course creation, and then there was going to be the labor of using these technologies. I've now come to a different spot where I realize if you're really going to buy into this gamification thing, the tools make it easier, right? They make it easier to do this. It's not an additional burden. It actually makes it easier. It is so easy to, for example, make authentic looking artifacts with Chat GPT. You know, what would a principal say to parents in a newsletter if announcing that there were volunteers coming? And then you go to Canva and put in school newsletter template. Boom. I mean, 3 minutes and you've got it. You know, so it really does. The technologies make it easier to do this.
And I think during the last presentation, I showed how fast it can happen too, because I took a picture of myself, I recorded myself, you know, saying a phrase, and then I uploaded those to the AI program that it animated it while we were talking about other things, and came back like 10 minutes later, and that little piece was done. And there's some limitations on that technology. I think it's like 14 seconds it can handle it at any one time, but you can plan around that. And you know, so like I said, the technology is there. It's all a matter of just learning it. And then once you've learned it, it makes everything easier. It's just like it feels effortless at that point.
I mean, I just am sharing a personal experience. I was preparing a syllabus for a proposed course next year. And initially, I was not told like I need to have a sample assignment. And I mean, with ChatGPT, probably I did not realize this before. I can prepare I mean, it's anyway, it's not like students are working on it. It's just a sample assignment. I thought of doing it and I got a very decent content and I could just work on that. And it was really much lower time than usually it takes to prepare an assignment.
Yeah. When you're working with large language models, they're amazing at concentrating data and interpreting that data. And then giving, if you need something from them, it gives you an excellent framework to start from, and then you fill in the meat of those bones.
Yes, that's true.
Any last thoughts or questions?
Do you see this process working with, like, are there some courses where this might not work? Or do you see this like this can work for anything? Does that make sense?
Well, you can, force anything to work for anything. I guess the question is it appropriate? Does this feel natural to you to do? If it's something that doesn't feel right and you're uncomfortable doing it, it's going to come across that way during the course. It's going to feel inauthentic. So unless it's something that inspires you, that makes you feel like, hey, I am into this, I am excited by this, then it's not something you should be doing. But if it is, and you jump all in, suddenly you think of all these other things that you could be doing. So it might not be this way, we're suggesting. It might be some other way, but because you tried playing around with these different ideas, it allowed you to come up with that whole new thing, like Gina did with that mystery.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say this could work with any course. And the reason I say that is because the idea is so big. Reaching for intrinsic motivation, finding a way for students to play with the ideas in order to learn. And I think you can do that. It can look like so many different things. Choose your challenge, right? So I went with a mystery. I could have made it more complicated by students in the discussion have to decide this way or this way. And then whichever one they choose, that kind of opens up the next module, depending on some other course. Not yet. I'm not there yet. But I think you can find ways to harness imagination and harness play with anything. I really think you can.
I'm glad you brought up that motivation, because I was talking with another person I'm working with on the next 3 workshops that we're working on, and you have to really consider what is motivating people these days. When it comes to social media and video games, that's what most kids are on. They're scrolling through their phones. They're trying to find that video that's funny, or they're trying to get a high score on that game. But are we finding that same motivation in the traditional way that people are learning? Are people excited to come into a classroom and listen to a lecture and do homework? No, they're not. Not as much. So if we can take some of those aspects that are drawing people's attention from social media, from games, from, other types of involvement that gets people excited, then you're drawing them away from some of those activities that maybe aren't as healthy. And when they're playing and going through your course, they're getting that dopamine hit from the playing part, but also they're feeling like they've come away with a sense of accomplishment through the learning that they've actually done. So you've got two vectors of motivation that, yes, I'm having fun, and yes, I'm learning something that's going to be valuable to me in my life. And I see this as a way of doing that.
Yes.
Thank you all for being a part of this conversation. I hope it was helpful, and I hope that some new ideas come out of it.
Me.
Positive.
I'll come running. I'll bring my computer and whatever else I got along with me, and we'll have some fun.
Yeah. Thank you all.
All right. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Next
Thanks so
time.
much, everyone.
Bye.
This was great.